Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kaleidoscope of Crime. Easy for me to say. Today, I have with me Jo Stubblefield, who has agreed to come on and tell her story of struggles with the family law system, CPS, and many other things in life, and her victory to get her children back. So, welcome, Jo.
Thank you. Thank you. I
I cannot
appreciate you
see it.
having me on to talk about it. So
It's important to talk about it and to share our
yeah,
stories. It's
for
not
sure.
easy.
No, it's
Well,
not. But if it can help somebody else through the process, or give them, or even open the eyes of the general public to so they can kind of, see what's really going on as well, would be helpful, because it's one of those things where you don't really realize till it happens to you
and
what it's really
even when you
like.
are going through it, you don't fully understand it till you're out the other
No,
side
they keep
either.
you very ignorant to the law. Um, even well, when it comes to CPS with your court appointed lawyer, if they have to assign you one, that is the only case in which you're assigned a lawyer in family law. So the Constitution doesn't really recognize family court as a real court system anyway. So it's technically, all of it's really unconstitutional to the United States, but they get away with it. So.
That, yeah, and that's not good.
So yeah, but they only suppose, even the lawyers. I had to fire all of my appointed lawyers and represent myself to get my kids back. So
Wow, good for you. So I
yeah,
guess we'll just start with the beginning of your tale, your
sure.
experiences. I guess it started with your first son.
Yeah. So basically, when I was 15, almost 16, I met my oldest son's father on an online chat. And we started hanging out regularly. Eventually developed into a relationship. Um, and when I got pregnant with my son, I had just turned 18. So I was of age when I had him. However, when I was about 4 months into my pregnancy, I kind of realized it wasn't going to work out between us. So I broke it off. Um,
What did you
Kind of
do,
find
Ashley?
out later on that he
Oh,
was
Jesus.
also expecting a child with his first child's mother, who was out of the picture up until, well, I don't really know, because it was obviously not true what he was telling me. So, but anyway, so she's pregnant. Like, my son's not even 2 months old, I don't think. So when I find out she's pregnant as well. So when my son was born, obviously, he denied him, all that good stuff. And then when my son was almost 3 years old, he had maybe seen him 3 or 4 times, even after the paternity test came back that he was his. And he didn't want any visitation or anything to do with him until his first child support payment came out of his paycheck. So along with my first child support check payment, right behind it, I got a servant of papers with all these horrible accusations and them trying to take my son from me when they didn't even know my son. They never spent any amount of time with. I mean, they had no way. This is before Facebook, MySpace. They had no way of determining what I was doing. There's none, and it was just, all these just grotesque accusations of abuse and neglect, and refusing to let him see him. And I'm like, well, I'd let you see him. You don't call and ask, So then it became like, basically, if she's going to make me pay child support, then I'm going to make her life a living hell. I'm going to keep trying to take my son so she has to pay me child support, you know. So it was pretty ugly for a long time. Along with that came the CPS phone calls, uh, nonstop. I had CPS at my door every other month since my son was about 2 or 3. So
And that went on for how long?
15 years. No, I'm sorry. He's 18. Like 13 years till he went to prison. So yeah, something like that, 12, 13 years. So, and it just was constant. It even got to the point where, I would lose literally everything every time he would do this because I would have to sell everything I owned. I'd have to take time off work for court dates. I couldn't afford lawyers all the time. It was just, and then one day after one court hearing in the parking lot, he looked me down the eye and he said, I can never love him because he looks just like you. That's what he said. I mean, so like that was when I knew this was more than them just being vindictive. This was something not right. You know what I mean? The front of the court initially at our first court hearing lied to me about what joint custody truly meant. And as a young woman, and I didn't know at that time about any of this stuff, I agreed to it. And I didn't realize that would leave a door open for the next 18 years to be constantly harassed and drove in the dirt.
And just to be clear, this man, the father of your eldest son, is a convicted pedophile
Yes.
now, and yet the
The worst
courts
kind of
are,
pedophile, too.
pardon?
The worst
Yes.
kind of pedophile at that.
And yet the courts are entertaining his allegations.
Well, it wasn't proven at that time.
Okay.
So basically, the way the front of the court works here in the state of Michigan is it doesn't matter how many times they file a motion and accuse you of the same thing, or how many times it's been dismissed, been proven unfounded, et cetera, et cetera. If they got an extra $100 and they feel like ruining your day, oh, I'm going to go file an emergency motion change for custody the next time my son comes with me. And then they kidnap them. And then it's a months and months long process of trying to get my son back into my custody.
And
So
so they actually kidnapped him at some point.
I call it that. But basically it was like kind of like a hostage situation, really, like they'd call CPS. If the court didn't do what they wanted, then they would call CPS. My son for years was terrified of doctors and shots and things like that because every weekend when they would take him to Beaumont Emergency Hospital to be examined for abuse. So we're talking pictures of the tiniest little bruises with measuring, trying to find anything they could to keep my son from me. And
That
so
sounds traumatic.
it really was. And my husband can probably attest to it. It's still hard for me some days,
Yeah.
it's not easy to talk about always. Just thinking about it kind of,
If you need it, if you ever need to take a moment, you
yeah,
go right ahead. You can turn your camera off and I'll just keep.
sure. Yeah. Thank you. I
I don't know
appreciate
what I'll talk about, but I'll think of
that.
something.
Yeah. Well, he, so when he said that to me, was just having my son Nathan, who is 4 years younger than Joseph. I was in a very abusive relationship, and I think it's important in the story to understand that the reason why I was stuck in a lot of these abusive situations and relationships and whatnot was because of my fear of Joseph's father.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I was trying to look for a way out. My family had moved to Tennessee. I had no support system. This was another thing he preyed on. He knew I didn't have any support system. So he knew that it was detrimental. I mean, every time he took me to court, especially when we moved to Tennessee, every year at the end of the summer when he was supposed to come home and start school, they would file for emergency custody. So every fall, I would have to prepare myself to be ready for my car to break down, lose my job. I've gone homeless over it. And eventually it just led me into very dark places in life, which ended up leading me down after my mom died. Started with like anxiety pills and like things like that, pain pills. And then, as life carried on, this continued to happen and losing my mom. And having to stay with these abusive men just so I keep a roof over my kids' head and go to work. And eventually, I think it just got to be too much. And I just kind of, I
Started
had
trying
no,
to
yeah, oh, yeah,
medicate
right,
to,
exactly.
yeah.
And then
And that's,
eventually I had tried meth. And when I tried meth, it made me feel more outgoing. It made me feel like I had friends and things like that. But, now I look back and realize, they were never, none of those people were ever my friend. We were living in the project. I basically ran my credit into the ground. I couldn't get a car loan. It was like I was with a very abusive man. My son, it was a terrible time. My brother, who's an alcoholic, was living on my couch with his girlfriend, who neither one of them would get up and help me clean or get a job. None of them did. So there's 3 adults in my house all day, every day, and I'd have to come home to a filthy home and my kids crying. It just, I couldn't, the depression. I mean, I can't really describe it. But I literally could not get myself out of bed. I couldn't,
mhm.
I just kind of gave up, and I just like, if this is all my life is going to be, and so then eventually CPS in Tennessee, that's when they became involved in my life. And they took my kids, and the way they did it was I couldn't believe it. They literally ambushed me with a surprise court date and then removed my children. And they never to this day had gotten any dirty drug screens, while I admit that I was on some drugs throughout that time. But even the court appointed lawyers would lie to me. Like, they would tell me things like, oh, they don't have to tell you what they want you to do to get your kids back. And it made it very, just very glum and gloom. The foster parents that my kids were with, were trying to like erase me, like I never existed. They wanted to adopt my daughter, but they knew in order to get her adopted, they would have to also adopt Nathan. They were willing to deal with it, except for my oldest son Joseph, who they didn't want to deal with or didn't want a part of, so they just dumped him into a group home, and that was it. They never saw him again. So,
And he was how old then?
he was 15. So what ended up happening is I had to fire. Well, let me back up a little bit and just say this was 2018. So at that very same time, this is when Joseph's father was charged and put in jail for incestual pedophilia. So he started having sex and raping his daughter at age 13. I've had psychological evaluations that, well, half the stuff they say occurred, it couldn't have occurred even in my worst state with me. You know what I mean? So I don't know what all he's witnessed. I don't know what all he's seen. He actually will tell me that he doesn't feel his dad did anything wrong, that he doesn't belong in prison. He tells me he's into infantilism, which is where you sexually get your rocks off by pretending to be an infant. The list
And
goes
this
on
is
and
your
on.
son, you mean?
Yeah, my oldest son, yeah. Mhm. And so he's 19 now. Just out of my own safety, my biggest fear is his dad's family finding out my address and starting the attacks with CPS and everything again, especially after I've worked so hard to turn. I mean, my whole life is like, it's like polar opposites. It's like South Pole, North Pole, So um, the fear of it happening again, and you know what I mean? Like, just, it's overwhelming sometimes. So I can't even tell my son where I live, because I'm scared that he'll give them the address and then the attacks with CPS and all that stuff will start again. So, but anyway, so while they were taking from my custody, he's dealing with that and me. So you got to imagine, I mean, everything he saw with me, he saw with his dad. I mean, he's saying he's having, I don't know if he is or not, because we live in different states, but he says he's having hormone replacement therapy to become a girl. I don't know if that's because his dad was so obsessed with Michaela and he just wants that connection. I don't understand, but I don't think his reasoning for it is what it should be. I guess I think it's more out of a mental health crisis than anything. Which, he's been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, among other things. But then after I fired all my attorneys with first that were court appointed to me, and I represented myself, I filed a motion to dismiss at my ratification hearing for the permanency plan, which would have put basically what happens with the law that Hillary Clinton wrote and Bill Clinton signed, is they basically get their money and their funding from adopting more children than the year before. So what happens is, say this agency adopted out 100 kids to total strangers. In order for them to get their funding for the next year, now mind you, this funding does not go back into putting these families together. It can go to fixing a road, or it can go to the mayor's salary. It doesn't matter. It just goes to a pool for money for your county. And they're paid anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a child. If they can get them labeled special needs, they get the most money. So, for example, suddenly my son Nathan had ADHD. They put him on medication that made him say he wanted to kill himself. He was suicidal all the time. They had to take him off of it. They put my daughter into a classroom with such severely disabled children that she's still playing catch up to get caught up with her class, because she was put into a class with. So when your environment is a major thing when you're a kid, especially when you're learning. So
Oh, yeah.
now she's delayed, not because she was delayed in the first place, but because they labeled her that to be able to put her into these classes to receive funding. My brother and his wife were exited custody of my kids. They made it 10 times harder on me than even CPS did to see my kids. My brother was terrible to them. The stories my brother, and I believe him, because he choked me with a seatbelt in the car in front of my daughter on Christmas Day.
Your
He was
brother
so,
did.
yes. So, they kept telling me if I came back to Michigan, that they would put my kids back into the foster care system. And I had to beg them, like, if I didn't get out of there, I knew I was either going to be dead or I was going to go to prison. There was when you're in that and you're on the street and you have nowhere to go, you have to make a lot of decisions that you wouldn't normally make, So I finally got them to let me move to Michigan, and I said, look, you don't let me see them anyway. And when this whole started, the whole point was they were supposed to help me, they wouldn't even give me a ride 15 minutes down the road to take a class. So I had to figure something else out. There was no public transport here or whatever. But I mean, I got on the bus in 2019, came back to Michigan, and really what happened in my life is really, truly a miracle. I mean, compared to where it started to where it's at now. So, but I ended up regaining custody of my children in April of, May of last year.
May of 2028.
Yep. And so they've been home a little over a year now. My brother basically abandoned my children with my ex-husband's father. Come to find out, the second I left Tennessee and came to Michigan, he invited his son back into the home, where he actually got into a physical fight with my son Joseph, who was still a minor at the time. And the reason why Joseph said he hurt him is because he had hurt my daughter. And knowingly, they left my daughter there, knowing he was there, left my children in danger. This is the same man who knocked my teeth out with a gun and beat me relentlessly. And they knew this, and they still left my kids there because they're just lazy, awful people. And then the only thing they did was take them to the doctor. And then I come to find out my daughter had a vision problem. Until I took her to the eye doctor here, I didn't know that they had already told her that she needed eye patches or she could lose her vision. She was almost blind in that eye. We're actually very blessed. She didn't need surgery. It took many, 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 many months of patching, upgrading lenses for eyeglasses. So now luckily we got her to where she doesn't have to go back to the eye doctor for a year. But he said had it been any longer, she would have lost her vision. He almost went straight to surgery, and I said, "Wait, let's try this first." You know, he said,
Yeah.
"Okay, well, you have to be on it," and we did. And it was, she wouldn't wear it for us or me because her grandfather, was one, which I don't doubt that he loves her, but the way he did it was wrong. He neglected her out of his love, right? So just because a kid doesn't want to do something, you can't, like her teeth, she had like 8 cavities and you could see the holes in her teeth.
Oh,
It
that
was like,
sounds painful.
oh yeah, my son, all her stuff I had ever bought her, clothes, toys, when I picked them up, they sent me nothing but dirty, broken toys and clothes that did not fit her. So all the clothes, I don't know what they did with the clothes and toys I bought her this whole time, but and then my son Nathan, he had nothing. He had maybe 2 outfits. Nathan was failing school in Tennessee and getting in trouble. And I'm proud to say now that he is making B's and C's.
Yeah, he's a B and C student.
He's doing track.
Plays on the football team, track.
I mean,
yeah,
he's doing great.
He's 180 degrees.
All it takes is a little guidance, and I think kids really crave that, really. I mean, for a long time, he was just kind of, Charles would lock the boys out of the house.
What it broke down to in Tennessee for the boys is they had no supervision for the 18 months plus they were down there. They were left to, they were told, and I heard this from Nathan himself, be back in the house by, was it 11 or midnight?
Or they'd lock him out.
Or they would lock him out. They would lock him out.
And they would lock him out.
And they would lock him out.
I remember one time, they would lock him out of half the house, too. So I remember one time and I knew they were in there, and Nathan was banging on this door for 35 minutes, and they were just sitting there. I'm like, what if there was an emergency? And these are the people my sister left my kids with.
See, this is my biggest problem with all this is they wouldn't let her have them back, but they wouldn't hold these people accountable that were treating these kids this way.
In my opinion, they should all be in jail.
They literally threw, if we ordered food online and had it delivered,
they would throw it away.
They would throw it all away. Why? What's the purpose?
If my brother's wife would drop off food, they would throw it away.
Yes.
For no other reason than I bought it.
Yep. Just because we bought it.
It's because I asked them if I ordered them because my son, called, Mom, we don't have enough, food, blah, blah, blah. And then started getting them toward realizing that, hey, this whole time they've been told that I'm still on drugs and doing horror and all these things, when in fact I was no longer, and I hadn't been, and I had plenty of hair follicles to prove it. They were trying very hard to convince my kids that I was still not, and it just, I tried so hard when I would come down, it took a long time to even get unsupervised visits, and I did that, and, that's when they started telling me things, and, a lot of it breaks my heart, but most of all is that none of it needed to happen the way it did, like if they had put that money, like they give foster parents $3,000 a month per child to keep somebody's kids, right? But what would happen because there's people who get their kids taken every day for no other reason than just poverty. So, for example, they can't afford rent. They can't afford food. They're a loving parent, but they're poor. So what are they going to do? They're going to remove this child and give it to somebody else and say, oh, by the way, here's $3,000 to keep them a month.
Instead of giving it to the actual parents.
Right. Instead of putting that money
and holding them accountable of what they spend it for, which they should do.
And they don't. It doesn't have to, some of them don't even spend any of it. I mean, when kids in America go into foster care, they're more likely to come up dead, abused, in every type of way, especially sexual abuse. A lot of predators do the foster care thing. Not to say that I'm sure there's some good ones out there, and I'm not going to say there isn't. I'm sure there's an exception to the rule, but statistically speaking, it is not the case.
So CSI on the screen here is asking what part of Tennessee?
Kingsport, Tennessee, so Sullivan County.
Okay. So Hopefully that answers your question, CSI. And now, how do I get this off the screen? Oh, there we go. There we
You
go.
know, it's funny. The court system actually looked. They actually looked at Jolene in court and said, we applaud you." At some point, I don't remember when it was. She told me this. "We applaud you," and Jolene's like, "Why?" She said, "Because by now, usually people have given up and just walked away from all their kids." And I think that's one of the biggest problems, particularly in that court system, is
Well, they give you
because
15 months.
because they assume, they stereotype everybody is the same, because I'm sure there are a lot of them. There's probably 90%, 95% that don't come back for their kids. But the one that does come back for her kids and did everything they asked and then some,
Yep.
but yet did not hold the people accountable
That were
that
abusing
actually
and
had the kids,
yeah.
Yeah.
is an absolute travesty. It's a crime. It needs to be abolished. It needs to be.
It needs, well,
something needs to be done. It's just wrong.
it's disgusting, really. You know, and again, it's one of those things where when people think, oh, you had sleep and your kids were too. And I'll admit to the wrong that I did or what drove me to it. Not that it's an excuse. I'm an adult and I could have made other choices. But given the situation I was in, it's a choice that most people end up making. Because you can't escape it. It's everywhere around you. So
it consumes you.
She was in survival mode more than she was in, I just need to make a paycheck mode. And survival mode is you do what you have to do to survive.
Yeah.
It's, you need to put food in your kids' mouths. You need to, have a roof over their head. That comes first and foremost, and you do what you have to do.
It just, and it just makes me wonder, like, for example, with the title that Hillary Clinton wrote, that Bill Clinton signed, both of which happen to be very good friends of Jeffrey Epstein. I'd just like to put that out there. Signed this legislation, and Hillary wrote it, Bill signed it in 1997. It's called the Family Safe Adoption Act. I can't go cover all of it, but the gist of it basically is once your ratification hearing's in, so this is where I filed my motion to dismiss and things went in a different direction for me. But they give you from that point 15 months to do what you need to do to get your kids back. That's nearly impossible. Just to get a steady job or roof over my head.
The court system doesn't move fast enough for that.
Took me a long time, especially when, it's no easy feat. So, for me, the biggest part of my problem was not having a place to just lay my roots and sit down and say, okay, I got a home and da-da-da and all these things. So that was the hardest part of the journey, was just getting that stability so that I could do what I needed to do. It wasn't a matter of not wanting to do what I needed to do. That was, for me, there was never a choice. You know what I mean? Like, I had to do what I had to do to get my kids back.
And the travesty of it all is they're paying people all this money to look after your children when they could give you
that money went into
amount. They could give you that amount to be able to do what you need to do for your kids.
Correct.
Exactly. And so why would you not put that into housing help? Why would you not put that into, rehabs or therapies? And why not? How about helping somebody get back and forth from a job?
Giving them skills.
Exactly. I think that's a lot of money to just go, we don't have
and don't ask them what they spend it on. Just give it to them.
Then another spectrum of it, outside of the CPS realm, is going back to Joseph's father. And obviously you can see, when I found out about what was going on, the fact that the court allows these frivolous motions over and over again to the point that it will destroy you. It destroyed me mentally, physically, spiritually. And now I have a son who I don't even know because of it. And the fact that now that I look back, I realize, well, his daughter wasn't the only 15-year-old girl he was having sex with when he was of age. I was one. How many others were there? He was in his just 23 or 24. He wasn't that much older than me, but he was still too old to be hanging out with 15 and 16-year-old girls. I didn't think nothing of it, and then they put me under that, and it was, and then I could never escape the stigma anyway. So it was like, okay, you want a drug addict? I'm going to give you a drug addict now because I'm tired. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just that was part of the fall for me. Like, okay, fine. You want to see a drug addict? I'll show you a drug addict. So, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's comparable to big pharma. If they cure you, you're no longer a customer, so we're gonna, or we're gonna charge you $1,000 for a medication that only costs us 5 cents to make.
Yeah.
Only in America does that happen. I remember when my grandma used to go to Canada just to get her scripts filled, and then they stopped allowing that. So, but yeah, they basically, everybody's making money except for the targeted parent, and they had attacked me for so long at this angle that I appeared to be the abuser. And he knew how to manipulate it that way, and they did, and they were damn good at it. It was him and his wife and his daughter. It was sick. And to watch them, it was like this love triangle, and it's like you don't put it together until you realize, oh my God, wow, we were right. Like I always said, they had a weird relationship. It was as if it was, in my opinion, if they knew for 5 years and she kept her in the home, then the wife also, even after knowing that he was having sex with their daughter, had another baby with him and had another girl. And she told me herself that, well, that's when she's like, oh no, another girl, I'm not doing this again. Why'd you lay down and make another baby with somebody you knew was raping your daughter? Furthermore, I'd like to ask, why did you help him to destroy me where I could have kept my son safe had you guys not done this to me from a man who was raping your daughter? So I question the mother's, ethics as well, because clearly there was more going on than probably they'll ever admit to.
So they had more children after the grandson.
One more child. Yes, they, even after she had suspected him of having sex with Michaela.
She went along with it. Basically, she didn't say anything. She turned her head to it and allowed him to do it.
Well, she said she went to the police several times and they laughed at her and blah blah blah, which is all well and good, but I mean,
you don't stay. Take your daughter and you leave. That's your daughter.
Just because the police laugh at you doesn't mean you should keep your daughter in that situation.
Right. But then to lay down and say, okay, well, and now I'm going to be pregnant again. Like I think that child, and so now the daughter, this girl, I have a complicated view toward her because at the same time, she was horribly manipulated and just neglected throughout her life, obviously by her father and mother. And anyone around them that could have stopped it and didn't say anything. However, she's now just like her father and mother, master manipulator. Oh, I'm the victim. Woo, woo, woo. And tried to, she again, if she found my address tomorrow, she would be sending CPS to my house. And all I want at this point in my life is to live in peace.
Be left alone. Just
nothing can ever be done to fix what was done. I hope one day me and my son can reunite, but that time isn't right now. I don't think either one of us are there. I really hope and pray for him. And it's hard to be in that position because I know he needs help. I know he needs somebody because he would call me for food and all these things, until I had to cut off communication. He expects me to buy him a car, but then tell people I was dead. It's just very twisted and morbid view on the world.
And he would tell people she was dead.
That I died.
So that they would feel remorse for him and
give him stuff or whatever.
Stuff. That's the
so
type
get sympathy and play on their
right. That's
exactly
what the sister.
That's what the sister taught him. Taught him
how to do.
His dad taught him.
And they still, to this day, they're happy as long as he won't talk to me. So as long as we don't have a relationship, they win, right? Ha ha.
Yeah.
But that's not winning. Joseph doesn't win. I don't win. You win because you think it's funny. It was never funny. It was never okay. And I didn't deserve that. I never had a chance to even try before these people were destroying me. And I was just a kid. And then the court, they lie to you. And in that situation, they won't appoint you a lawyer.
You know,
So in that environment,
And you were only 18 or 19, right, when this whole
I
thing
was 19
started.
when he was born. I was 19 when he was born, and he started showing up about 2.5 years later when he had to start paying child support.
So
And
you
the
were
thing,
just starting to get your footing in life and
yeah,
figure
I
life
just
out.
got my medical assisting certificate. My whole time I was pregnant with my son, I got my GED. I had got my medical assisting certificate. I had got an amazing job at this amazing office, which I ended up losing because of having to go to court so much. So, which happened with a lot of jobs.
You know, something else happened too.
And my school. I went to school for social work. I was like maybe 2.5-ish semesters, like a last semester of classes, and then like your shadowing and all that. And I had to drop out because of it. I couldn't afford to go. I couldn't, and with the situation I was living in, everything, I could no longer continue to. And now I'm buried in student loan debt, and almost all the money in my student loans went to attorneys fighting his dad. So about $50,000 in student loan debt, if that gives you any idea.
That's scary. So CSI, she might have missed. She's asking, why does Tennessee CPS allow children to stay there with someone who got their daughter pregnant? Do you know? You did touch on that earlier.
That wasn't Tennessee. That was Michigan. And the CPS, I don't know how far their involvement went into it with them, but they lived in a whole separate household from me. So I lived in Tennessee. He lived with his daughter and family in Michigan. So,
okay, and also that conviction came, your son was already like 18 by then?
No, he was still underage.
15?
When the conviction, I would say 14, he was 16 or 17. 16,
was it?
And
he was convicted in 2018 or 2019. I think it might have been late 2018.
Because he's going to be 19 this year, right?
Yeah. So I think
he was 16 or 17 when his dad got convicted.
And he received 6 years.
He'll probably never see the light of day again.
So
and he was living where at the time?
He was living with his family.
With his family, his
at
daughter.
The time of his arrest and his final getting, his bond being revoked and everything. He was living in his dad's basement prior to that. So.
And your son was living?
He was in a group home.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because that's where the court's putting.
Right.
Or at least that's where they pushed it to that way.
Yeah.
Something else that's kind of, I think needs to be put out here too is last year in May, she was awarded full custody of her kids. We got to go down and pick them up. We thought for sure we were free and clear of this fine. We were going to finally get to move on with our lives. You know what I mean? That life that she wanted to work towards. Mm-hmm. The thing with residents here in Michigan is according to the courts, after 6 months, the kids will be full residents of Michigan.
So my daughter's grandfather.
Wait a minute. Previous to that, Michigan CPS contacted us. They needed to come over once a month, something like that. We asked why. She's been awarded full custody of her children. Michigan CPS said they had no idea. They wouldn't. They've asked Tennessee. I'm pretty sure Tennessee asked them to come here once a month and keep an eye on her, but they wouldn't say why.
Yeah, she didn't know why I had lost custody of my kids. Right. She didn't know any of that.
She didn't know anything about the case.
She was never.
They just had her come over here for
once a month for
7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And she finally got tired of it, and her boss got tired of it because they were giving them no information. They finally closed the case.
Without,
They're like, we're just wasting resources going over.
Yeah.
We should be helping people.
So they had closed the case actually.
So why? What's Tennessee hiding? What's the Tennessee CPS court system? What are they hiding? Yeah,
exactly.
Why wouldn't they tell them what they were waiting for?
They never told me when I was granted custody back of my kids, nor did my lawyer ever say anything to me about it.
Nope.
that CPS would still be
Nope.
in my life for a year. But, you know, it's done and over with now. Now I'm at a point where I can finally kind of move on. There's still a little haggle. My daughter's grandfather is still trying to fight for visitation and custody of my daughter. It's really quite ridiculous at this point. But basically, they don't. Once this current court case gets dismissed, my daughter becomes a resident of Michigan, and we can go to the courthouse and file for termination of his rights. But until that happens,
How long did it take you?
which has
To
been
get
ongoing for a
visitation.
year now, that court case has now been ongoing for another year. And I haven't heard from my lawyer, I haven't heard from the court, nothing about what's going on with that. So.
Yeah, the daughter's dad gets to violate probation over and over and over and over. She went to get her kids back 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Had everything for them they wanted. Passed drug tests, all this stuff, and they kept telling her no. She couldn't even get unsupervised visitation
Until I passed 2 hair
until
follicles.
she passed 2 hair follicles and, you know, jumped through the hoops and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yet her daughter's father
was living in the home after deemed, you know, but it should have just been automatic termination at that time.
Right.
But again,
but
it's not about what's best for the child. It never will be. It's about what's best for their
Right.
pockets.
right.
So the only reason why this case is probably still open is because it's probably generating money somewhere within their system. Somebody's getting paid to do something.
So we're all
Yeah.
sitting in limbo.
Yeah, no, he wants to adopt my daughter.
I want to
can't-
adopt her.
We can't move
and
on
your son,
or proceed with any of that until
because
that
the judge-
last case gets closed.
The judge keeps putting it down the road. Well, he's violated probation again. We need another 60
Yeah.
days, 70 days, and they give it to him.
But
Why?
when I would file, and they
For
say,
how
I would,
long have
instead
they
of
been
resetting
allowing
it,
that?
This has been going on
For
since
2 years?
December. They
2
filed.
The original filing was
Yes, the original filing.
in March of 2020.
That
I
was-
received that went on to May of 2021.
Yep,
that
May of
one
last
court
year.
case.
They
When I
denied
was
him.
granted,
They denied the father any rights. Period. Gave full custody to her.
right.
Then
That
all of a
2
sudden in
weeks
December,
2 weeks before
Right.
they would have been here for their 6 months residential period, the grandfather went and filed again and courted another action, and it keeps getting. So basically, I don't know what's really going on. You know, my lawyer told me there's absolutely no way he's going to end up with any visitation or anything because of the circumstance. But it's just frustrating for us because I can't close it because what it is her grandfather was given 2
It's
15-minute.
like a ball and chain attached to you that you're just
Yeah,
dragging around
yes, that's
everywhere.
Right.
yes.
I
yeah.
just want to move
It's-
on with my life.
But the thing that makes it so frustrating is it's the last ball and chain.
Like that, yeah.
Once this is over with,
I'm free,
she's totally free, and I
and they won't.
think that's going to be such.
They
a
won't let
weight
me go.
off
And that
of her
court.
that it will. The PTSD that she has, and she has it very bad. She really does.
Yeah.
It's a true thing. I really think that's going to help her move on. Finally,
Mhm.
I mean, years and years and years and years she's been going through this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for 18 years, well, longer than that.
Yeah, it's been longer
Since
than
I've been a mother, I've
So-
been having to live under a constant threat.
All we're doing is waiting for the judge, the same judge, by the way,
Who deemed him a
who
danger?
deemed him unfit to even have any type of visitation rights and gave her full custody. Now he keeps giving this guy extension after extension after
Why?
extension.
When I would file and wasn't ready, they would dismiss
They would
it and
just
tell me
dismiss
to
it outright.
refile when I was
See,
ready.
the 6-month thing here is important because they filed in Tennessee because at the time they were still residents of Tennessee. It was 2 weeks short of Michigan residency. If this gets
That's why he
dismissed-
waited that long to
Right.
file.
If
He waited to the very last minute.
If this
To
gets
keep me
dismissed out
entangled
of
in that
Tennessee,
court.
from that point forward, anything they file, they have to come up here.
Right.
And it's just not, it's a different ballgame.
Now I've been very lucky, and one thing with this is that unlike when I was going through it with Joseph's father, and I had to drop everything to travel and be there and be present, because it's such a absurd filing and things. They are letting me appear by Zoom and that sort of thing. So that's been helpful on our pocket for sure. But but then again, when Joseph was young, we didn't have that sort of thing. So.
So, what effect does this have on your kids having to go through all of this over and over again? Because I'm sure they see you guys going through all of this.
We try and shield them from it, basically, especially the daughter.
She has no idea.
Yeah, she's too young to really
Nathan
understand
is aware.
it. Yeah, but he actually tries to support the whole thing. I'll do whatever you guys need. If you guys need testimony, if you guys need statements, if you got, he's obviously old enough to know what's going on. Yeah. But still, it's his right to be a kid, and he should be a kid before.
When the reunification was harder on me than I think it was the kids when they first came home. I would be like, one time, this is a really good example, and it's a really, tearjerker kind of story at the end, but I was up north in Beaverton, and we were at the beach, and my kids were burying each other in sand, and they were just playing, and the laughter, and they were just having a great time. But it sent me into a PTSD episode where I started crying uncontrollably because I was thinking about, it was like I never experienced it so strongly. And my son, he can recognize it now too, sometimes when it's happening, which God bless him for, he's 15. I wish he didn't have to deal with it, but it's something that has gotten better, but probably will never completely go away. But he just grabbed my hand and he said, Mom, let's go, let's pack, and he packed everything up, and I drove back to the house, and, I was getting my daughter ready for bed and getting her pajamas on and getting her brush her teeth and all that stuff. And I said, I love you, honey. Good night. And she turned around and she looked at me and she said, I always knew that, Mommy. I always know that you love me. And it just.
And that's exactly what you did this all for. Yeah.
It made it all worth it. So
you went through all of that just to hear those words.
And it made it worth every tear, every mile crossed, every bridge burned, So, yeah. I'm glad, even though I might not have done things the right way in the beginning because I was on drugs at that time. However, if I hadn't have done it the way I did, I might have never seen my kids again. So.
Yeah, the day she was awarded her kids was a big day. It was.
And just because
Joe very rarely, when we first started dating and we're together, and she'll tell you, I am the ultimate optimist. If there's even the sliver of hope, I hang on to that. And all I could do for her, and it's unfortunate, all I could do for her was just keep her going. She's a very determined woman on her own. But so many years of this, it wears you down.
Anybody it would.
She looked at me several times and she's like, what if I don't get him back? No, you can't play the what if game. But what if I don't? It would stick her in that mindset, and I kept having to pull her out.
Yeah.
To tell her this, this is possible. We can do this. And she worked hard, did everything they did ask, and then some. I went way over and above and beyond.
I paid child support every month.
Yep.
Knowing that the money wasn't going to my kids because they had nothing to show for it when I picked them up. So plus I sent them, it's just whatever. I don't care.
Clothes and toys and all of that.
It was like money is invaluable.
The whole thing behind the money was just to show the court that, hey,
I'm supporting them.
We're doing what you ask us to do. Yeah. She's doing what
I only did it because I knew I had to. If I chose to leave that for anyone.
You want a drug test? Here's a hair follicle. You know what? Here's 2 hair follicles.
Anyone.
This is the way she did it. What she had to do.
Yeah.
But now that the father has filed something, well, why are they not holding him
to the same
standards they held her to? It's not fair.
And
it's not right.
Really, at the end of the day, I ended up taking the bullet for my children's fathers.
Yeah.
For their abuse, their neglect.
TJ says, great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having us on. I appreciate it. It's the first time I've got to get out on a public platform and kind of tell my story. So, and definitely, anybody who might need or want some advice or going through the same situation or anything like that, or just, wanted to know more, anything that can help somebody.
Especially if they're in Tennessee.
I mean,
Because
feel free.
It's
Yeah.
different from any other place, I have to tell you.
It's very backwards.
Very backwards different.
Yeah.
Than here in Michigan.
It's no lie the South's like going to a whole different country.
When another state's CPS looks at you and goes, "What's going on? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Something's not right.
Yeah.
Something is just not."
But another thing with Tennessee you need to keep in mind is they were under federal oversight for a lot of years because of their failings with their CPS, division. So, and a lot of states have been, but but they were, when that happened with me, they had just come out the year before. Sorry, the dog. For the year before, or whatever, had been released back to their own oversight.
So while we were going, the cat ate my headphones.
How funny.
Yeah, we've had that problem.
But the rabbit, though, instead
Yeah.
of the cat.
Well, the dog likes to take our stuff and pull it underneath our bed where we can't reach it. So she has a whole stash of one shoe of each pair underneath there, and various clothes and
I
whatever.
also can no longer own flip-flops.
Nope.
So.
Yeah, she only takes one, not both. You'll find one, but the other one's under the bed somewhere.
So CSI is asking who is under federal oversight. That was the CPS in Tennessee, correct?
Yes, Tennessee was. But if you just Google search it, there's a lot of states that are under federal society over CPS, especially I want to say it's Arizona, Arkansas, or whatever, that like totally got their CPS department defunded because of basically fraudulent removals of children. So a lot of states have been federally sued. So what happens is you're messing up bad when the feds come in and say, you cannot oversee your own child protective services agency because of that quota, which people, everybody say that's not true. Read it. Read the act, Family Safe Adoption Act. You read that and you tell me it's not true, because it is. Their funding depends on it. So basically what they do is kids who are like really bad behaved or are going to be trouble to adopt or whatever, more than likely they end up leaving those kids in abusive situations even longer than kids, say, like my children, because my children were a high probability to be adopted because of they had decent behaviors and things like that. So it's like in the projects, they almost go shopping from door to door, see which kids they want to take next.
Joe's I'm going to tell you, she's very smart about all this stuff. She really did a lot of research, a lot of reading, and, standing up for herself in court without a lawyer. It took a lot. She's very up to speed on the knowledge of how all this stuff works, or should I say how it's supposed to work.
But it doesn't.
But it really doesn't. How
you would think it works.
They kind of make their own rules as it goes along. They feel like they don't have to answer to anybody. It all goes back to, it's supposed to be for the kids. Well, those are the ones they should be caring for. And I think the reason
they get away with it is for two things. Number one, most people don't have the money it takes. CPS comes with 10 of their own lawyers, right? And all you're given is a court-appointed lawyer who's paid by them, right?
Yes.
Who's giving you bad advice. Will tell you, just do what CPS says and you'll get your kid.
Yes. Yeah,
that's
pretty much.
That's exactly what they told me. And you know what? He's 23 years old and now they've got him in a group home.
Yeah. That's not true at all. I did it was beyond, I met all the requirements
and
way
that was
before
all they told me. They said, oh, just do what they tell you to do.
It doesn't work. And that was going to be my second point. Number one,
I've been doing what they tell me.
Yeah. And that was going to be one of my second point, was people like that who don't believe us, right? So like they it's easy for someone whose kids have never been taken from them, who's never lived in government housing and been that stature of poverty, to say, "Oh, just do what they say and you'll get them back." It doesn't work that way.
That's why
It
I said
takes
she
way
went.
longer.
That's why I said she went way over and above.
Way
because
longer
she
than
knew she was gonna
15
have
months to complete what you need to complete to get your children back. Way more than 15 months. But that's the time frame that they give you, and they expect you to find a regular paying job. They expect you to pay child support. They expect you to find housing
You have to have a
appropriate.
running car,
Good
transportation, and you have to prove all this stuff.
So yeah, that was going to be my second point. Actually, I'm glad she said that.
But yet, the daughter's father has yet to do any of this, and they're considering giving him some type of visitation. Why?
Well, they're not. I don't think it'll happen.
An example would be that if I wanted to have a visitation with my son, now I don't drive, and I live at that time.
Exactly. And they won't help you get to
an hour away. At that time, I lived an hour away from my son. And so I needed to hire people to drive me to go see him.
Right. Yep. I had to do the same thing when my son Joseph was in a group home. They put him in a group home about an hour and a half from where I lived.
And those people had to give criminal record checks before they could drive me to go see my child.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they didn't go that far with me,
but yet his father, who was a convicted pedophile, didn't have to.
Exactly. And another thing too is like, so people really need to open their minds.
And they also do a criminal record check.
Yeah. I have compared to my daughter's father, I have nothing of it. I mean, I have a few little stupid things from when I was in addiction, but
this man has been not only accused but convicted of abuse on her and on both boys, has been arrested for it and convicted, yet they still allow him to do the things he's doing.
But if I had done that, my rights would have been terminated.
That'd have been it. They'd have said, "Yep, you're done. Don't even bother coming back."
Basically, as long as they can get the child out of the custody of the custodial parent, they're making money. So I ask people that say, "Well, you have to done something or this or that." That's why I said before, you don't understand until it happens to you. And people with that mindset of just do what they say and you'll get them back. How about they stop taking kids for no reason and try to keep these families together and reunify instead of basically legally kidnapping them and holding them hostage for what I call ransom money, which is the state funding.
Yeah, they're using laws.
Why would they want to give me my kids back if it's not going to make them any money?
Right.
Yeah.
They're basically using the law to take the kids and hide behind it and twisting it for money. Twisting it to make it look legal.
Exactly.
And it's just not. I mean, like I said, when another state looks at you and goes, "You gave her full custody. Why are we doing it?" And they wouldn't give them an answer.
Right. So, but it is, where as is life. But this is where we need, as a society, to need to change. And this is where the problem comes again. Until it happens to you, people don't aware, or the ignorance is, well, you had to have done something, or you deserve Now, I'm not going to deny that there isn't a need.
There's definitely a need. Look at it as, it's just a problem of poor people.
Right. But they don't. I would just say that I hope you never have to know my pain. I hope you never break up with somebody and have such a bitter ex that they drive you broke, they drive you into poverty, they drive you into a drug addiction just because they didn't want to pay child support. And the worst part about it is the courts entertain this. They allow it to happen, and it's been proven by psychologists that it's child abuse. Parental alienation is child abuse. All these things that I spoke of today, psychologists are saying are very detrimental to the mental health and well-being of children. And yet, instead of fixing it, it just gets worse and worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that tells me it's not about the kids. I don't know why or what the reason is for it, but I mean, here we are. So I guess it guarantees funding somewhere that maybe we don't know about. I don't know.
It needs to be about protecting the children. There are children who need protection, but there are
Absolutely, there's
also
a need for
families
sure.
that just need help.
Help. Exactly.
Like
And that's where the
you, like
corruption comes
me.
in.
Yeah.
Because whatever, like, they don't even need proof of anything. All they need is a call giving an accusation, and that's their evidence. And they will run off and remove your kid and all that of that one phone call without proving anything. And
Yeah, they'll believe
here's
it.
my
They'll
opinion
believe
on
it,
it.
and without proving it.
If you're going to label me on this, then okay, then I want you to bring me into a court of law in front of a jury of my peers and let them try me. But you don't get
CSI
that
is
if you're
putting
labeled.
up an example here. She says, my friend's ex lives in Sullivan County and had CPS called on her. CPS is allowing the child to stay with abusive mom, but won't talk to bio dad because the mom has a restraining order on him. So just an example of their
Mhm.
CPS not protecting the children and picking and
Exactly.
choosing what children they do and don't help.
Exactly. And
Very
it is.
well said.
She's absolutely right. I've watched Sullivan County leave children in horribly abusive. My own children, right? So
Yeah,
they're
yeah, they left
my
them
own
with,
children were
yeah.
basically abandoned with an old man and an old woman who threw away their food and only took care of Braylon, but didn't make her do anything and put her in such a really, I'm just glad I got her when I did at kindergarten so that we can try, and she's doing much better.
Everybody parents different. I'm not going to say that there's a guideline. You know what I mean? There's always
no
gray
book.
areas. There's no book. But what they were doing, Joe puts it as child abuse, and I have to kind of go along with her on this. They were doing her no favors. They were not holding her accountable to anything. If she wanted cake and ice cream for dinner, she got it.
Yeah.
If she didn't want to eat something,
she wasn't potty trained until she was almost 5, just because nobody would take the time to potty train.
Right.
And she was also put in that classroom with the other disabled children her age. So she was in a classroom full of other kids who couldn't be potty trained because of their disabilities, none of which she has.
But yet, it was so important to the courts to leave her where she was instead of giving her back to her mom.
Right.
That I don't understand that. If they're supposed to check both ends of the spectrum here, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Not just pick
You
up
would
on
think.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
and they don't.
And actually, didn't Shannon go out there a couple of times and
they
nobody
went? Yeah, they went.
He couldn't find anybody, or he'd leave messages. Nobody would get back to him.
They wouldn't open the door.
Yeah,
just
they
like
wouldn't
I
open
said
the
with
door.
my son banging on the door.
So.
And
why
he was a worker for CASA, and he was the first person who looked at me without a judgmental point of view, and I think he really helped that extra push.
He actually did. He was.
So I really am grateful for him, because if it weren't for him, and there was a few times in the middle of it that I was like, it's just like, I was so, but when you live in constant fear of courts, in family court especially, no matter what ends it's on.
Give us a few minutes, please.
1 second. Right on, honey. Hold on. Hurry up and up. Okay. So anyway, sorry. But yeah, so it's a mess. The whole system is. And as long as people are making billions of dollars off of it, it's never going to change. So the best thing you can do is be prepared and be aware that it happens, and don't go give this
don't take stuff for granted.
Judgmental outlook, like, well, just do what they say, or you must do this and that. No, that's not.
Get it in writing.
And more than half.
Do your research.
Yep. Get it in writing.
Yep.
Do your yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do it.
Be careful.
If they ask
and
you
seek out people who've been there and can help you and advise you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's one of the biggest things. Don't go through it alone, like TJ said.
Huh?
Like TJ said, don't do it alone. You can't do it alone.
Exactly. There's a lot of CPS support groups for other families going through it. So if you are going through it and need a place to go for advice, just search in, CPS corrupt, this or that. Some states have their own page for it. There's many. Connie Rigoli is an amazing lawyer in Nashville, Tennessee, and she has been working for family law reform for a long time. I actually was at a protest that she was at in Washington, D.C., where we actually got to, it was a big family we called it the Million Parent March, but there's, probably not a million, maybe we were like 10,000 people there, but still media blackout, of course, because, they don't want people to, and when you see how many other people are affected by it, it's crazy to me, but we don't have the platform or the voice or be able to speak out because of that stigma that, oh, well, you must be this terrible person. Even people I've known my whole life.
Your kids were taken from you, so that means you must be the terrible person. I mean,
people who, like my brother.
Even today, I still struggle when people ask me, do you have kids?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do, but I didn't raise mine. Not through any choice of my own or fault.
Right. Yeah,
but people don't understand that.
Too, because I don't want to have to go on the whole spiel about my oldest. Yeah. I don't know if I should be, you know what I mean? And then, it's just like for example, my niece, I babysat every single day up until my kids were taken. But my brother won't tell you that. And if there was something that serious going on, then why were you letting me watch? But now I can't see my kids at your house. And you're going to choke me in front of my daughter with a seatbelt. If my other brother hadn't got me out of that car, I'm positive he would have killed me right in front of my daughter. And at that point, I was like, what do I do? If I call CPS, they're going back to foster care. And if I sit, they're going to be here and be abused.
So he's the one being physically abusive, and yet it's okay for him to have the kids.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually, now that you mention it, that's two people that the kids were around down there that were abusive.
Yeah.
And the courts allowed it.
The reason they abandoned them at Charlie's house, my kids, was because of the arguments between my sons and my brother. And it had become so explosive and so bad that they literally just left them there one day and just left them there. And they would show up to take them to doctor's appointments. For what? Why? You're not even doing anything the doctor's telling you to do.
See, for the longest time, the original plan for the kids was her brother was supposed to take them. He was their guardian. The courts gave him and his wife, legal guardianship over the kids. It was not.
It was their call.
How long were they there before they took them to Charlie's?
Not very long, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Okay, 4 or 5 months later, they take them and drop them off at Ray Lynn's grandfather's house, where her father was at
Tennessee.
But they didn't know this for.
No, I think they knew. They just didn't want me to know. Like they were trying to push off my, because I would message her like, please get my dog, get them out of there. Oh no, it's fine. So I think that they knew. They just didn't want me to go off the deep end for nothing. So I think they try to hide it just as well as Charlie did.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's all right. Well, I know I'm on.
He's very loud.
And now mine are calling me. So, but yeah, and I thank you for having me on and being able to talk about this openly. And I hope anybody watching or listening can, take something from it. And the most thing, if you've never been in this situation or position, I would say just don't be judgmental against people. Some of the worst drug addicts you see on the street were people who were drove to just, the closest way I can say is when you took my kids, you took my heart. And then I started behaving as if I didn't have a heart to protect the rest of myself, and build those walls.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. I can relate to that. Ouch. I can't hear a thing. That dog is barking.
Oh my goodness.
So thank you for telling your story, Joe. I appreciate that. It's important to get our voices out there, and
for sure.
Although we're in different countries, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Although we're in different countries, we have very similar problems in both places, and I've had similar experiences. So
it's scary.
It is, and
And it's
It's good to
undescribable.
talk to someone and to know that you're not alone
Yeah,
and
for
that there
sure.
is a light.
Yeah, and there really is, and my biggest thing is don't give up, especially early on.
No.
Like
Mm-hmm.
get on it, and also, if you have CPS in your life, record every single interaction, record
Mm-hmm.
every single phone call, and don't communicate through text messages because they can't be upheld in court. Communicate through email.
Emails are allowed, yeah.
Emails are admissible in court. Text messages are not. I don't know about Canada, but that might help some people in America. Don't text back and forth with your worker. It won't be held up in court. However, if it's said in an email or on recording, it will be.
TJ says he loves us.
I love you too, TJ. Thank you.
Gotta love TJ. Yes.
He's a great guy.
He's super great.
TJ
guy.
is awesome. I haven't known him that
He's been in
long.
my corner since day one, no matter if I was
That's the
doing good or
biggest thing I
bad.
like about him is he was one that didn't look at Jolene and
judgment.
stereotype.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people do that. There's way too much of that happens.
It's because of that nothing can get done because people assume that it's rightful, and it's usually not.
When her and I first met, it could have been very easy for me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know where. I didn't. By the time her and I met and started hanging out, you could see it in her face. I mean, she told me, "I'm just tired." She said, "I've been doing this since I was 19 years old, fighting the courts, fighting dads, back and forth, up and down." She's like, "I'm just tired," and I'm happy that we met. We crossed paths, and that we could take this on as a team and finish it the way it should have been finished. Her getting her kids back and having the opportunity to live a happy life. And I wouldn't write it any differently.
I feel guilty that I couldn't give that to Joseph, but I did offer to let him come here and live with us.
That's I hope everybody understands that when he turned 18, he was no longer under the courts, no CPS, nothing. He was free to do what he wanted. I had jobs lined up for him. He could have stayed with us until he got his own place. We had a car for him. He's more than welcome to come up here. It was his choice to stay there, and that's fine.
But don't expect
don't expect
pay for everything.
Don't expect us to keep feeding you money week after week after week
and
after week.
And then being so disrespectful to who I am.
So, the line of communication is still open with him, and every once in a blue moon he'll reach out for some crazy notion why, but hopefully
until
he's ready to. I think Joseph struggles with
reality.
He sees where she's at now through her brother, or through his brother and his sister, that she's not the bad person that his dad and his sister made her out to be. So I think he's confused. I honestly think, just in his head, that he doesn't want to go back and say, I was wrong.
I think that a lot too sometimes.
I just think that he would rather stick to his story because this is what he's been doing to get through life. He gets the sympathy, he gets money, he gets places to stay, he gets food, and he doesn't have to work for it.
Yeah.
Just all he has to do is say, my mom's a drug addict and she's dead. And she left me like this. People feel sympathetic.
And they've been giving.
So now he's in a confused state. We're hoping at some point in time he's going to come to the other side of the conclusion that he can have a good relationship with her if he wants it. He's got to accept it.
It can't be one-sided anymore because it hurts me too much. And it's not fair to me. It's not fair to my other kids. It's not fair to him. He's cutting himself short. So, but anyway, blah, blah, blah. We're going on and on. So I probably had to get going. But again, thank you so much for having me on and my husband. And I just appreciate
I appreciate you letting me sit in too. I apologize if I did talk too much, but I got to tell you, it's quite a story.
It is. And you're an integral part of it. It's your story as well. So you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
So I guess we'll call that a night. And thank you for being here, you guys. I know it's not easy to do. and I hope the rest of your evening goes well.
Thank you.
You guys take care. Keep in touch.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.